I was gonna say, there's so many things that you can do that are good for you. That
Yeah.
even if you, in your mind, you say, I don't want to do them, like this isn't something that, like appeals to me. There's so many things that are good for you that we know are good for us, right? Exercise, meditation, and just breathing in general, proper breathing. Spending time outdoors, at a park, just in nature. These things, like we know that these are good for us. They're scientifically and spiritually, they're good for us,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes, even though you don't really want to do them, just doing them will really make a difference. And that's something that like I started learning, especially last year with the pandemic and everything, not having much to do. Sometimes you just gotta do it.
Yeah.
As much as it sucks, as much as you're like, I don't want to get up right now, I don't want to leave the house, I'm like comfortable. You just gotta do it, and your reality will start shifting on its own. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was talking to someone about that the other day, real quick. Like, that's kind of going into motivation.
yeah.
And I think motivation is garbage. Like, no one is ever going to want to do the dishes. No one's ever going to want to go and exercise unless, like, they realize, oh my God, the endorphin rush. But most people don't really want to exercise. They don't
Right.
want to do these things that help them out because it feels like work. But when you can start changing your perspective and, like,
Mm,
no, this is the way that I'm blissful,
right.
instead of it's being work. No, this is how I create a blissful experience in life,
Yeah.
is by doing these things. So it's not work.
Yeah.
It's the only means by which I can have a satisfying life.
Right.
So is
Yeah.
that really work? I wouldn't say so.
Yeah. There's a quote that I really like, and it's not exact quote, but it kind of goes like this: is um, discipline takes over when motivation fails to come in, right? So it's like when you like that motivation, having that discipline of, I know these things are good for me and doing them,
Yeah.
it'll change. And once you make your mentality, once you get your mentality to that point where it's like, oh, like I no longer need to do this thing when I have motivation, I just need to do this thing, it's game over. Like from there on out, right? You get into like this mentality of like, I can do all these things,
Right.
and I will succeed in everything that I do. And it won't just apply to that one thing, specific thing that's good for you. It'll apply to everything else, right? Yeah, motivation garbage. Get that motivation, like just remove it. Discipline. Do the
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that you need to do. Yeah.
That's so good. All right. So here's another philosophical question. How do you think language and, like, your upbringing with language
Mm,
shapes the way that you see reality? Because language is also really heavily tied to your culture,
right.
right? So, and you look at the different cultures in the world and you obviously see a way different style of life.
Yeah.
So how do you think this, do you think it's really shaping reality in a big way, the way that we learn language?
Yeah, yeah, I would say language is huge. At least in my experience. So I learned Spanish first before I learned English. So I only spoke Spanish from ages 1 to 4 before I went to kindergarten or pre-K. And I don't know, it does shape your reality a lot. So there's certain words, like even now to this day, where I'll wanna say a word, but I only know it in Spanish, and I have to think about it. I'm like, why don't I know this word? Like this is a simple word in English,
Yeah.
but I'll only know it in Spanish, so I have to like translate it in my head, and it takes me some more time, right? Um, from what from what studies show, knowing a different language also helps with problem solving skills. So if you know two languages, if you're bilingual, it helps a lot with problem solving because you constantly have
Yeah.
to problem solve day to day. Someone will speak to you in Spanish, and then right after they'll speak to you, someone else will speak to you in English. You got to problem solve and say, okay, which one's which, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is that it comes naturally after a while. At first, it's really difficult, but when you're a kid, it's like you're like a sponge, right?
Yeah.
You just absorb it all. Um, so I would say it makes a big difference. I think within society, it makes a big difference as well. Just because you kind of you associate with people who are bilingual if you're bilingual, right? And so you kind of gravitate to those people. They have similar perceptions as you. They go through similar experiences as well. We were talking earlier about how Europe, almost everybody knows 2 to 3 languages,
Yeah.
right? Um, and that's going to change your perspective a lot. You think about too the train system in Europe. Everyone's so closely connected,
Yeah.
right? And they're different countries. You think about the U.S. Everything that happens within the U.S. is within the U.S. Like we have no real ties to Canada nor Mexico, who's around us, right? You think of Central America. Central America are pretty tight knit, right?
Yeah.
Because they have language they have
Right.
similar language and similar
Yeah.
culture. So the way I see it is language is huge. Learning different languages, I think, is super important, just because it can really not only allow you to communicate with different countries, different cultures, different people, but it can also help you associate with them and understand them a little bit better, right? So I always said if I could pick one superpower of the world, it'd be to know every language. Because imagine the stories that you would learn, right? Things like that. So, but yeah, language is huge for perception. Um, because I've known some people too who they can storytell in English. It doesn't have the same feeling as it does when they storytell in Spanish,
Right.
right? They'll butcher some words. It won't be as emotional. When it's in your native language, you just get the feel of what someone's trying to say,
Yeah.
right? And so language is big when it comes to understanding as well. So I would say that's probably the biggest part that it plays with perception and really trying to grasp what the other person's saying.
All right. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's huge. So now we're getting to more of a meaty part of this podcast.
Yeah.
How important do you think honesty is? So, honesty, I think, plays a big role with perception because it's kind of whether you're being true to yourself
Yeah.
and showing that to everyone around you, and that's going to influence their lives, right? So,
Yeah.
are you putting on a show or are you being honest? And yeah, how important do you think that is?
Man, that is it's huge. I mean, we talk about honesty a lot too, in this podcast and just day to day with each other. So honesty is honestly huge. I would say you always want to try being honest with yourself, right? Especially when it comes to perception, because I will tell you right now, your perception is also shaped by the lies that you tell yourself, and you trick yourself into believing those lies, which then makes it your reality.
Mm,
So I would say the more honest you are, the more comfortable you'll feel with your reality.
yeah.
You can trick yourself into believing a lie that you don't feel at your core. And that's the hard part. There's no rubric for this. It's not like, it's not like a test, that you got this rubric, you gotta follow these steps. If you do all these, you get 5 points each. No, it's not like that. You gotta there's no test. It's you. It's you talking to yourself. You gotta figure yourself out. I think a lot of people don't talk about this enough, but reactions to how you feel towards certain things are going to be your cues for whether or not you're lying to yourself or you're being genuinely honest with yourself. Because it's not easy to know when you're being honest with yourself. I think there's certain ways that we perceive ourselves and how we want to be, and there's certain ways that we are. And until we focus on how we are and honest with ourselves there, we're not going to be able to get to where we want. We try to kind of cover and mask some things to try to get there, but instead we get moved over to this other category of being this person that we perceive as like, oh, okay, that's more of what I want, but it's not exactly what I want. And you almost like it's harder for you to get to that place where you want to be.
Sure, yeah.
So I would say try to be honest with yourself. Try to focus on physical cues, social cues, right? So sometimes, for instance, I know a lot of people get anxiety when they hear certain things, right? If something makes you anxious, stop doing it, right? It's and I say this because, for instance, a big one is going to parties, right? A lot of people have social anxiety. That's a real thing. But a lot of people say, how am I going to meet people unless I go to parties? How am I focus on the things that are important to you, right? If a party makes you anxious, you don't need to go get drunk just so that you don't feel anxious to be at that party.
Yeah.
Let's think about it and say maybe not going to this party because I feel anxious is the right move. And though you may miss on some opportunities, you're also going to help your well-being a whole lot more, right? You don't have to take advantage of every single chance that you have. And that's the reality. And that just comes with age, right? And knowing yourself better. So I would say honesty, be honest with yourself. What do you like? What don't you like? And that's the game, is figuring it out. And it's a game you never win. It's a game that you play your whole life, right? But it's important. It's important to know yourself. and the older you get, the more that you experiment and experience those situations, the more that you can get to know yourself, and what your perception looks like.
All right, so that was really good. I think that was a perfect explanation for how we should be honest, like with ourselves, because like I think what you touched on there is like a lot of like anxiety and kind of like self delusion, like telling yourself lies.
Yeah.
So this is all really self focused, and it's so true. If you start going down this rabbit hole, I talked about it last week with Christianity.
Yeah.
Where if you go down this rabbit hole of pretending to be someone, pretending to have this whole character that you aren't actually, that's not actually true to who you are,
yeah,
you'll find yourself slipping down into this perception of yourself that you don't know who you are anymore.
Yeah.
And it's going to be terrifying. And yeah, it's going to be, you're going to get to a point where you feel like I've lost who I am and I'm living a life I don't want to live anymore because I've been living for other people. That's really what it is. Like, and Steve Jobs has this quote, life is too short to live it for other people. Like you just got to live life for yourself. And to me, what that means fully is be honest. Yeah. The only way to get what you want in life is to be honest. If you live life not just lying with your words, but lying with your character, you will attract people who are not compatible with your true character.
Right.
And not just that, but you're going to be giving people false information about who you actually are. Yeah. They're going to act on that differently than what you want.
Right.
So being honest with yourself, like you're talking about, is so huge to getting what you want in life, to actually getting that reality that you want to experience, and attracting the people that you want to attract.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think one more thing I want to add with that, and this is really important because this is something that's been pretty prevalent in the people around me in my life, is it's not easy being honest with yourself, especially, and I want to really, really touch on this, is especially when there's trauma involved. It's really hard to be honest with yourself because it's a common response for a human being to say, something happened to me. I don't want to think about this. I want to erase it. I want to be my normal self. If that's the case, I would honestly say seek a professional. And it's, you don't have, I understand that a lot of times you'll feel weird. You'll say, oh man, I'm going to see a therapist. There must be something really wrong with me. Not the case at all. I think everyone should see a therapist. Everyone should go. These are professionals that are trained to help you become more honest with yourself and get over these things. Well, not get over, but tackle these things that you're dealing with. So, I've had a lot of friends and a lot of people close to me who have had trauma. And I would say, and if you have, and even if you don't have trauma, but you have friends like that, encourage them to go see a professional and just be there for them. Right. You don't have to ask about details. You just have to be there with them and just sit there with them and try to, help them through that. And I think, that's just one little thing I wanted to add in because honesty is not easy, especially when it comes to things like that. So make sure that you're getting help, whatever that may look like. Might be a therapist, might be someone really close to you who understands you. But please make sure that you're doing what you need to do to help bring you peace and help keep you honest, right? And the sooner that you can do that, the sooner that you can start growing and flourishing. So
that's really, really good. Yeah. All the people in my life as well who have had therapy have only come out saying just how much better they are at understanding themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say this a lot. And the more you can understand yourself and like what you actually want, why you want it, and why you are the way you are, the more understanding, compassionate you are going to be for other people around you. Right. It's this self-love, this self-understanding that I think is really key to kind of spreading it across to everyone around you. And I love that so much. I highly recommend therapy for anyone who feels like it's hard to be honest with themselves, who feel like they are dealing with something really challenging and traumatic. All right, so the last little thing here that I have is going to be on manipulation. Ooh. So this one I don't have a ton of experience with, so you might have to
This one hits home.
Now tell me how.
Oh my god.
Because the only thoughts that I've had are just based on our conversations, right?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I'm really curious about how you think about
Oh my god.
how manipulation can tie in with honesty, or how it can tie in with actually being better for the person that you're manipulating. And is that somehow gonna be, going back to what I said,
Yeah.
affecting their life in a negative way, even though it seems on the surface to be positive? So yeah,
Right.
manipulation.
Yeah, so this one, yeah, this one's definitely a question directly to me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say, in the past, I have, you know, I mean, we all manipulate, right? If we want to get a job, to a certain extent, it depends on what extent, but we all manipulate, right? We all want our family to like us. We all want our close friends to like us. We all want, um, when we want to get a job, we spice up our resume so that it's appealing to whoever is hiring us, right?
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, we all manipulate. Now there comes a point to where it's, if you want to get a job, then that's fine, right? If it's something that you love, it's something that you want to do, then that's good that you're trying hard to get that job. But there's other, I would say, when it comes to relationships, you don't it's a balance between trying, but not overdoing it, if that makes sense. You don't want to become the other person. So one way that I usually, and in the past, have gotten relationships, and I'm going to be completely honest here, is I try to become like the person that I really like. Now the problem with that is that you start either losing little parts of you that you really really liked or really enjoyed, um, or you start getting resentful because the other person, you're only being like the other person, and you're not able to see your own light in that relationship. And so this is one of my relationships was heavy on this, and that's why I say, right, with perception, we have very different like perspectives of life. And it was great in the way that there was like so much love, but it was just compatibility was kind of not there. And so but it did start off with me trying to become like her. I saw something beautiful in her, which she still has and she'll always carry with her. But I saw something beautiful, and I wanted that. And so I basically tried to become like her, and we had a great time. First year, it was probably, to this day, still one of the best years of my life. Um, but it started to collapse later on when the pandemic hit and other things. It was pretty much, our relationship was stripped to bare bones relationship, and then that's where we saw, oh, maybe trying to become like this person was not the move, because now I'm resentful that I don't see myself in this relationship. I just see me being like her, and it just, it just, the compatibility wasn't there, and it took me about 2 years to see that, and so I would say, yeah, manipulation is definitely something you gotta, that ties in with honesty, and that you have to be aware of, and try to figure out, right? You don't want to go to the lengths of, just because you want something that bad, you do anything to have it.
Yeah.
You gotta pause every now and then and say, okay, wait, is this something that, like, and it's hard, especially in relationships, because there's another person involved. So you have to
Right.
take into consideration their emotions, their perception, right? If naturally you guys don't have a similar perception about, or you guys don't feel like you're on the same page, that might be, one of those flags where you say, this is something to reconsider, this is something to talk about early on, rather than later on, when it can become really really difficult. So I mean, for me, it was a learning experience. I probably the relationship I learned the most from, just because perspectives were so different. Um, but it's all experience, it's all life. But yeah, manipulation, I would say, don't ever try to become like someone, and don't ever try to have someone become like you. Um, Help the other person to understand themselves. Right, that's the biggest one.
That's great.
help the other person, if you truly, truly, truly love them, and not just in a, as a human, but like you want to be with them, the main thing is to help them understand themselves better, and put your own ideas and perceptions and all that aside. That's something I did not do it like as nearly as much as I should have. Um, yeah, I wanted almost like this person. I was trying to build this person, and it doesn't work like that. You have to allow people to be who they are, and the relationship will be so much better. And if it's not, then that's fine. You have to accept that. And you have to say, this person, it's just not the one for me, and that's okay, because there is someone out there who you're gonna help build up, and who's gonna help build you up, and it's gonna change your life forever. So,
Dang, that was beautiful. Oh my God. Yeah, that last bit I think has been so important in my relationship.
yeah,
For it is almost like therapy, like what you're talking about, trying to help someone understand themselves
mm,
is like allowing a space for someone to feel safe being completely honest
yeah,
with sharing their true intentions, their true motives, and like their true thoughts. Because the only way we can really understand ourselves is like to communicate with someone. That's just the way that we're made.
right,
Most people are made. I know some people can do it on their own, but
mm,
it's really hard for most people to kind of get a grip on things unless they like get a dialogue with it, get it out in the open,
right,
and have some other perspectives.
yeah,
And yeah, I think that's been really really helpful in my relationship. Is like not trying to have some goal in mind about like how we should be. It's just
right,
trying to understand each other, allowing each other to be completely honest and open.
mm-hmm,
And yeah, that's been the biggest thing for us.
yeah,
So yeah. I don't know if you got anything else. I think that might be all I got. I got,
yeah.
yeah, one more thing I guess we could talk about, but it's up to you.
Ooh, how long is it gonna be? The big one?
It could be short. So I just wanted to talk about empathy a little bit
Oh,
because,
okay,
like,
yeah, yeah,
I think this really ties in this different perspective,
mm,
different perception thing.
right,
Getting a grip on that. How do you think that with that understanding that everyone's got this totally different upbringing and everything's been shaped differently for them as opposed to how you see things.
mm,
And how do you think that plays into kind of the climate in the U.S. right now with all this division?
yeah.
Real quick.
What I would say, well, at least from my own experience, empathy is very difficult for me. I'm someone who feels in the past tense, and I'll explain this a little bit. It's I use logic at the moment of something happening, right? And then, so let's say, I mean, I'll stick on relationships. Let's say, I have a girlfriend. She says that, she's feeling a certain way. I don't really think about it in the moment. I just say, "Oh, are you okay?" Like I'm very blunt and saying like, "What do you need?" What, right? And some people, they don't need that. They don't need anything but comfort. And it's hard for me to give that, and I'm still figuring out, what that looks like, for me to give to another person. But that being said, right? I think empathy is something you have to work on. It's something you have to really practice on. And it's, as far as like the habits behind it, right? So you can fake empathy. We were talking about being honest. I think the best thing that you can do is say, "Hey, I don't really know what you're going through. I can't really, empathize with you, but I know someone who has dealt with something similar, right?"
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to be the one to do everything. And this is something I learned in my very first relationship, is that you can't fix people. You can't do it all yourself.
Yeah.
If you cannot help them in a way that's beneficial to them, then you should become a resource to them, and help them get other resources as well, right? So what I usually do is I'll say, "Hey, I actually have a friend who's like been through something like that, like someone you could talk to." And it comes a lot with being honest, right, and being open. And so at least my friends, they're all pretty open to any friend who's dealing with something, even though they're not friends together. A lot of times they'll say, "Yeah, no, I'm open to talk with them," or, I want to see what's going on with them. And usually within people's friend groups, you'll have people that have gone through similar things as you, right? So seek those people, and I think that that'll really help. Don't And here's one thing I would say for relationships as far as empathy goes. Do not just rely on that one person. Some relationships that might be the case where you can just rely on one person to do it all. That's fantastic. But not every relationship is going to be like that. And I think that's key to understand. Um, just because someone's got great qualities, but they have a hard time being empathetic to you, does not mean you should rule them out, right? Maybe it's something that you need to try to, perceive in a different light. And then with today's climate, I would say, understanding. Like, the more we focus on similarities and less on the differences, the better off we're going to be. Same thing with empathy. Right. So it's focus on the similarities, especially with politics. Focus on the similarities. A lot of times we're saying the same thing. I had actually at work the other day, the manager and one of the specialists, they were arguing. And they were on the, I was listening to them and I was like, you guys are both agreeing to the same thing. Why are you guys yelling at each other? Yeah. And literally what happened is saying, I'm saying we're going to do this. And then the other guy said, that is what we're going to do. And I was like, no way. And they were like, oh, so we're on the same page. And after 5-10 minutes of yelling, they were on the exact same page. They wanted to do the exact same thing. And I was like, oh, come on. So try to focus on the similarities, not on the differences. And you'll see that, as soon as they did that, that's where the empathy came in. It's like, hey, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to yell at you. Like, we were talking about the same thing anyways. Right? The goal is to try to figure that out before all of that arguing. Right? And you save yourself a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. So that's all I have to say about empathy and what it looks like in this climate. And yeah.
Dang. That's perfect. All right. I think that's a great way to wrap it up.
Yeah, we went a little bit over. There's so much we could talk about. Sorry, guys. Hopefully this was beneficial to you guys, though. Yeah. As always, Sammy, the interviewer. Great questions. Thank you. They were, that second to last one. That was, oh, man. Brought back, a lot. So, but thank you. Yeah. All right.
Catch you guys next time. Take a Rest Podcast.